Thank you for listening to this episode.
And follow the podcast on social media by finding @Prestigious_pod. And if you'd like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life, you can reach out to me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official, or by emailing the podcast directly at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Lastly, sign up for our newsletter either through social media or on our website.
This is the Prestigious Initiative. Welcome. I'm Chris Bean. Today I have a guest who embodies the principles of discipline, consistency, and high performance. Dre Baldwin, a former basketball player, entrepreneur, author of 25 books, and pioneer in the mental game mastery. Dre, it's an honor to have you on the show.
I'm excited to be here, Chris. Thank you for having me on.
So, Dre, what would somebody get from listening to today's conversation?
It depends on what questions you ask me. But what I would say in general is learning about how to take their game to a higher level, whatever that game may be. First of all, understanding what your game is, knowing what is necessary to play the game, and then how do we actually implement it and make it into a real thing.
Okay. Yeah. So, Dre, your journey began from high school athletes struggling to make it to the, to make the team, playing professional ball. Truly inspiring. Can you take me through some key moments that helped to shape you on that path?
Wow, well, there are a lot of them. Let's isolate a few. So one was getting out of college. I knew that there weren't going to be any professional basketball teams checking for me because of the level of school I played at Division III college, which is, for those who don't know sports, the third tier of college sports. So it's not like the scouts are looking for players from that level. So I knew I was going to have to figure out a way to market and sell myself in order to even get an opportunity, let alone to get signed to a contract and have an actual job playing basketball. So during that period, I really just kind of went into marketer and salesperson mode. And luckily, I kind of had that in my genes to be a marketer and a salesperson. Even though I do have a business degree from a university, none of this was taught to me in school. It was just things that I had picked up on my own, and also through dabbling in network marketing, believe it or not. I learned more about selling than I did in 4 years of college. So that's where I started to pick up those selling skills. And I realized that a lot of athletes, for the most part, I'll include myself, we just want to be able to play and have that be good enough to have opportunities. But I knew that my play was not enough to get an opportunity. So I had to do some extra marketing and selling myself. The good thing about that, Chris, is that when I stopped playing sports, because sports don't last forever, we have a very short career path, I could use those same selling skills to do other things, which I still do to this very day. So I would say that was the biggest one for me. If I give you one more, it was probably a few years into my career. So I started playing professionally in 2005, to give everyone a frame here. In 2009, I found myself bouncing in between jobs, but at the time the phone was not ringing. So I didn't know if or when my next job was going to happen. And I started to look at my presence on the internet. At that time, I had one because I was publishing basketball content to YouTube, mostly at that point. I had a big basketball fan audience. And I was blogging because I would write about my experiences. And now it was starting to become a thing that maybe there was a way that you could actually monetize your presence on the internet in a relatively simple way. It's not like people were not making money on the internet 10 years before that, but you had to really, really be you had to be a serious geek to make money on the internet in the late 90s. There were people doing it, but not people on my level of knowledge. By 2009, someone with my level of knowledge, I'm an internet geek, but not a tech geek. You can make money on the internet if you just knew what to do. So I found out what to do. And that's when I started to monetize my presence online through selling products, making courses. At this point, YouTube, you could monetize videos. That was not always a thing. So now I was able to make money on the internet. So that was probably the second inflection point, because when that happened, Chris, what it did was open the door to where I'm at now. Because what I started building was, back then we called it, now, building a personal brand. Nowadays, that's a normal phrase. But back then, that was relatively new, having a personal brand. So I started to build one in 2009, and the foundational pieces of that still exist to this day. Only thing that's changed is that I removed basketball from the equation, even though I still source my sports background as part of what I talk about. So removing the basketball playing. And the other thing is that I think over the last 15 years, I've gotten a lot better at explaining my positions, my points, and reaching people who are not athletes.
Okay, so talk me through, what does it look like? You're at a Division III school, and you're trying to market or sell yourself as somebody who can play in the professional leagues. What does that process look like for you?
That's a great question because back then I could not have answered because I didn't know. And well, the good thing is, Chris, that one of my teammates, he had known some people who did play professional basketball and they had played overseas. Most of my career was played in Europe. And he knew people who had played basketball in Europe, but just like him, I had never even been to Europe. I'd barely been out of the state of, I'm from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and I went to school at Penn State, Altoona. I'd barely been out of the state of Pennsylvania that much, let alone out of the country. So I didn't know anybody overseas. But he knew people who had played, and they kind of gave him the game, and he passed it on to me what you have to do. So there are these events called exposure camps. Chris, you ever heard of them?
I
You
have
know
not.
anything about them?
Nope.
Okay, so you've heard of a job fair though.
Yes.
Okay, so a job fair is where a bunch of people who want to have a job but don't have one, or they're looking for a better job, they show up. And also, who shows up there are people who have jobs to offer, but they need people to fill those roles, and they all come to meet. It's a destination event where people with the jobs, people who want the jobs come meet, and hopefully you find the right person or the right opportunity. So an exposure camp is the same thing, but for athletes. But at exposure camps, the reason it's not called a basketball job fair is because you don't just stand around and talk. You actually bring your sneakers and you play. So imagine 200 guys who all think they're good enough to play pro basketball, all coming to the same place for 2 days to all prove that they're good enough to play pro. That's what it is. It's like a casting call is a better way of defining it. So a whole bunch of models or actors coming, but there's only 2 or 3 jobs that are going to get filled here, but it's 300 of us. It's like that. So that's the exposure camp. I went to one of those events in 2005, played pretty well. And my resulting collateral, which was a scouting report written by a professional scout, needed because I needed third party validation, and the footage from that exposure camp, which is also needed because, mind you, I played Division III college ball. So no matter what I did in college, I was playing against guys who were not pro caliber talent. So me playing at this exposure camp was me playing against pro caliber guys. So it was more valuable than anything I had done in college. So that footage and that scouting report were the collateral that I needed to be able to show people at the pro level, hey, I'm somebody. So I used that, I leveraged that to go get me a basketball agent. And the way that agents work in the sports world is similar to the way they work in the literary or entertainment world. They're the middleman between the people who have the talent and the people who hire the talent. Now, usually, if you show promise and talent, the agents are calling you because they all want to represent you. Because agents, you understand with an agent that if they help you make money, they get a piece of that money. They get a percentage of the money. So agents want to represent a bunch of people who are going to make money, so they make money. That's just a business deal. But no agents were looking to represent me because it didn't look like I was going to make any money, right? Because nobody knew who I was. So when I got this collateral, I started calling the agents. This is backwards. Usually the agents call you. I was calling the agents and saying, hey, here's who I am. And at this point, Chris, I had collateral. So the reason why I didn't call them immediately when I got out of college because I had nothing to show them. Now, after going to the exposure camp, I had some proof that I'm professional level, or at least I believed I was. So with that collateral, I was able to get an agent, and that agent signed me to as representation. I mean, I didn't get paid for getting signed to an agent, but now he's going to go out and work for me. He finds my first contract. So my first contract was in Kaunas, Lithuania, in late summer of 2005. That's how I started my pro career.
Now, at this camp that you went to, what was the atmosphere from the other players? Was it kind of like everybody knew that they were there and there was only so many spots and they were kind of not combative almost, or was it kind of like we're all here, we're going to play and it's going to be what was that like?
It was a little bit more of the latter. I mean, we all understood what we were doing. We all knew why we were there, but at the same time, we're all relatively young. These are college age, fresh out of college, so early 20s, 21, 22-ish, most of us. And when you're that age, you pretty much figure you have time. We don't really have time, but you figure that you have time. So yes, it was competitive, but it wasn't like we wouldn't shake hands or talk to each other. We were all guys who had played college basketball. We all felt like we were good enough to play pro. We were all kind of in the same boat. So it's similar to, I don't know if you watch something like the Miss America pageant where they're competing, but at the same time, they're friendly with each other. It's like that. That's the best way I can describe it. I don't know why I thought of that, but that's the closest thing I can come to is the Miss America. So it was kind of like that. Yes, we got on the court and we competed, but we're all trying to get on. And at the same time, the professional basketball world is relatively large. It's vast. And there are a lot of jobs out there, not as many as people think, but there are a lot of jobs out there. And For me, it was I just knew I needed to impress. It wasn't so much that I needed to beat him or you. I just needed to show that I have some abilities that some team somewhere in the world might be interested in. Not necessarily that I need to be better than anybody at this event, because there are another 2,000 guys who are not here who are also trying to get jobs.
Mm.
So you're competing against the field. You don't even know who the field is.
Mm.
You just want one team to say, we want this guy. That's the game. And I would tell athletes that all the time. You're just looking for one person to say, we want this guy. And it's not necessarily about the guy next to you, to your left or to your right.
So you mentioned getting on YouTube and seemingly pretty early kind of in the YouTube kind of scape. What was
Yes.
the kind of thought behind that decision getting on YouTube, and what did that look like kind of in the early days?
Excellent question. So I passed over that, and when I was earlier telling the story, so let me go back and tell you why I got on YouTube. So when I went to that exposure camp, I told you get footage. So mind you, this camp was in 2005. So this was not some digital footage that they sent you via email. This was a VHS tape. You remember VHS tapes?
You do.
Yeah. So the VHS tape, if anybody listens to this under the age of 30, ask your parents or Google it, and you can find out what VHS tape is. Basically YouTube, but a physical version. So that VHS tape, I knew that if you lose it or leave it in the sun or it gets wet, you lose all that footage. And that footage was the most valuable footage that I had, because it was me playing against professional level players, which again, my college experience would not have provided that. So I took that footage, that tape, to an audio visual store and had them transfer the footage onto a digital CD. And that data CD, then I uploaded that footage to YouTube. And I didn't do it because I was trying to get myself known on the internet, because being known on the internet in 2005 was not a thing. Nobody was trying to do that. That wasn't a career aspiration like it is now. So, excuse me, when I put that footage on YouTube, I just left it there and didn't even pay attention, because who cares about putting videos on the internet in 2005? Nobody, including myself. I just went back and checked on YouTube maybe 6 months later just to make sure it was still there and there were comments on the video. People who I didn't know, no names, no faces, with random screen names. And it would say, hey, who taught you how to play? How often do you play? Who do you play for? What schools you go to? And I realized that there was an audience of young males, mostly 13 to 24 years old, who wanted to learn more about basketball. They were aspiring and they wanted to advance in basketball. They weren't just these guys who play on the weekends. And they were going to the internet to get information. Whereas coming from my era, if you were a teenager in the 90s and there was no one to teach you basketball, well, you were just out of luck. You had to figure it out on your own. Whereas now, going into the early to mid 2000s, if you want to learn basketball and there was no one who you personally knew to teach you, you could go on the internet and get help. You could crowdsource your knowledge. And I realized this not immediately. It kind of hit my subconscious when I first saw it, but I didn't take advantage of it till maybe about 2007, 2008. That's when I started to go to the basketball gym with my cheap little $100 camera. This is before we had video cameras on our phones. And I would record with the thought in my mind that someone on YouTube was going to watch this. Up until that point, I would just go to the court and practice because I was practicing. I was still going to court to practice, but at the same time, now I had two thoughts. Not only am I going to practice and work on my game, but also whatever I do here, I might put this on YouTube. So I started thinking a little bit more strategically about how I was practicing and what I was doing and making sure it worked on the camera. And that's when I started to focus more on building what we now call, having an audience. But that, again, up to about 2008, 2009, that wasn't anything that I was consciously trying to do on purpose. It just sort of kind of happened, I guess you could say, grassroots, naturally.
So, Dre, you've built an incredible brand around the concept of the mental game mastery. How do your experiences as an athlete influence your approach, your mindset? How do you transition to those lessons, to work with the entrepreneurs and professionals with that kind of athlete mindset that you have?
Number one is that we're in a performance and results-based business. I tell entrepreneurs this, I tell business professionals this, salespeople this, same way that I told athletes that the bottom line of everything that you do is you must go out there and perform, and you got to produce a result. Because in sports, you are judged not by your feelings or by what anybody in the bleachers has to say. You are judged by what the scoreboard says. And that scoreboard is the ultimate arbiter. They're the judge and jury. And that's the performance and results-based foundation of everything that I talk about. Everything we do is based on achieving the result. which means when I'm working with an entrepreneur or professional, the first thing I want to know, if they come to me with a challenge or they want some help, first thing I want to know is what's the goal? What are we actually trying to achieve here? What do we want the scoreboard to say at the end of the day? When I'm clear on that, now I can answer your question. All right, now I can help you with what you need, because there may be more than one answer, but the answer needs to be based on where you're actually trying to go, because you could be trying to go in 2 different directions here. So, or 20 different directions. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that mindset is the foundation. It's the foundation of all success, and Chris is the foundation of all failure. When people perform at a high level, it's the foundational mindset that they have that leads to that performance. And when people are performing at a mediocre or poor level, mindset's the foundation of that as well. And some people may wonder, well, how is that even possible? Well, the way that we think leads to the things that we do, and the things that we do leads to the outcome that we have. Now, of course, your physical abilities and your resources play a role as well. And at the same time, we had to be smart enough, it goes back to the mindset, to know where do our physical capabilities make the most sense. If I had tried to be a wrestler, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation, because I would not have become a professional. My body's not made for that. I'm tall, I have long limbs. I should be doing something that requires running and movement and endurance. That's what my body's built for. So I had to choose what I call the right vehicle. You got to be in the right vehicle given your tools and your proclivities. And it's the same thing when it comes to professionals. What's the right vehicle for you? Should you be in a sales job where you're talking to people all day, every day? You want to knock on doors? You want to cold call? Do you want the leads handed to you? Do you want to be a leader? Do you want to be a rank and file member? Do you want a background job, or do you want to be coding where you don't have to talk to humans at all? All right, what makes the most sense for the type of person that you are? And this is, again, what we call choosing the right vehicle. And it applies to sports the same way. I pulled this from sports because, Chris, before I got into playing basketball, I played a little bit of football, a little bit of baseball. Neither one of those was going to be my sport. They were not the right vehicle for me. I could have maybe become mediocre had I keep trying at both of them. But basketball was a sport that made the most sense for me, given my height, given my length, given my access to be able to practice and all of those things. So you got to be smart about that, and you had to be strategic about it at the same time. So that's just a couple things that I pull from my sporting experience that also apply in the professional and the entrepreneurial worlds.
Okay, so and maybe I should have started with this, but can you give me like a mental game mastery summary, just so the listeners can kind of have an idea of what we're talking about as we continue on?
Sure. So our mindset pillar over here is based on 4 principles. First one is discipline. How do you show up every single day to do the work? Second is confidence, putting yourself out there and your work out there boldly and authentically. Third one is mental toughness, continuing to show up, putting yourself out there and doing the work consistently, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to occur. And the fourth one is personal initiative, being a go-getter and making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. So everything that we do, everything that I talk about, is all based on those 4 pillars as the foundation of our whole business brand framework.
Okay, so discipline and confidence, and I think consistency kind of goes with that as well, are central themes there. Why do you believe that those qualities are so crucial for success? And how can somebody develop them if they're not naturally inclined towards structure?
And that's an excellent question, Chris. And the answer is because most people don't do it. And what you just said, your question was, the answer was in the question. And what I tell people is that the opportunity in life is always in the opposites. Opportunity is looking at what most people are doing and not doing it, and looking at what most people don't do and doing it. And why is this? Because most people are, by definition, are average. So if you don't want to be average, I'm assuming anyone listening to this show, I mean, with the word prestigious in the title, I'm assuming people who listen to the show don't want to be average. So all you have to do is look at how most people operate and figure out where's the opportunity in being the opposite of that. And since most people have no discipline, most people are inconsistent, most people do not persist, and most people don't follow through on things that they start, all you have to do is the opposite of those things. And that's where the opportunity comes with discipline. So how can you be disciplined? I'm assuming that's the question, is that we have to understand where discipline comes from. And first, let's talk about how people get it wrong. Many times I get people who come to me because I'm pretty much known for being consistent and disciplined and posting content all the time, and people know me for that. So when they come to me and they tell me, I ask them, what are you dealing with right now? What's your challenge? They'll say something along the lines of discipline, persistence, follow through, sticking to things, doing what I'm supposed to do. And the fact they're not doing it. And I'll ask them something like, okay, well, what are you going to do to solve the problem? What do you think needs to happen to solve this discipline challenge? And Chris, let me ask you, what answers do you think I mostly get when I ask people that question?
Well, they probably know what to do, but they're not willing to actually do the thing. So they probably answer the questions with the answers that they should have.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much what I get every time. They say, well, I just need to get more motivated. I got to push myself. I got to actually go to the gym. LOL. I got to pay attention to my investments a little bit more. I got to make those phone calls. I got to finish writing that book. I got to finally launch that podcast. So usually people say, I'm not disciplined because I'm not doing ABC. And then I say, well, what are you going to do to solve ABC? And they say, well, I got to just do ABC. And so they're basically going in a circle. All right. So the problem with that is discipline cannot be force fed. And people talk about discipline as if it's something you can force feed upon yourself. Let me just make myself do the thing and then everything will be great. This is not the way that it works. Discipline is a byproduct of structure. So when you have the right structure in place, some people may call this a process, or you may call it a system, or you can call it a routine. And when you do any of those consistently, it becomes what we call a habit. But all these terms outside of habits are interchangeable in this context. When you have the right structure, system, process in place, discipline is a natural byproduct. An example: if you work in a sales organization, and in the sales organization you had to be at work at a certain time. They give you all the leads right there on the computer screen. All you have to do is click the button in the calls, and they say you need to make 50 calls a day. 50 calls are going to lead to 15 appointments. 15 appointments will lead to 5 offers. 5 offers equals 1 sale. You make 1 sale a day, then you're good and you can keep your job here. You'll make this much money. As long as you follow the process, then you're going to make the money and you'll keep your job. That's a process. That's a structure. That's a system. And the discipline is simply doing what the process tells you to do. Same thing in sports. Anybody's ever played a team sport? There's a coach. The coach tells you, here's how we do things around here. Here's what time practice is. Here's how we run the plays. Here's what you do before the game. Here's what you do after the game. Here's what you do during the game. So in life, anytime someone wants to step their discipline up, the most important thing you need to do, only thing you need to do, is plug yourself into or create, if you have the capability, a process or system to follow. I'll give you one more example that people can kind of visualize even better is look at a company like McDonald's or Starbucks. I don't know where you geographically located, Chris?
Just south of Chicago.
Okay, perfect. So just south of Chicago, if you go to McDonald's and I go to McDonald's here in Miami and we both order the same thing, a Big Mac, and we put both the burgers next to each other, nobody could guess which burger came from the Miami location, which one came from the Chicago location. Why? Because the system is so tight that everything looks and feels and I'm assuming tastes. None of you should taste test the McDonald's burger, but they all taste the same. Why? Because the system is so tight. And it doesn't matter who works there. All right, you and I can go work at a McDonald's today, and by the end of the day, we will look like seasoned veterans, not because we're geniuses, even though we are, but because the system is so good that all we have to do is follow what it says on the picture and it's going to produce the same result over and over again. Same thing at Starbucks. They have such a tight system that they can expand operations and they don't need geniuses at every place. They maybe needed 1 or 2 geniuses to start the thing, but then everybody else can kind of be an automaton because the system is doing the work, not the people.
Right, and that's interesting you think about that or speak about that in that way because I think of discipline as a set of systems that you follow, and I
Correct.
would say I have a proclivity to think in systems in a way that probably some other people's don't, just because of the background and kind of the steps that I go through to happen. But I'm told often,
Right.
oh, you have such good discipline, but it's not really the discipline that I have. I have a way to think about structuring different things inside of systems so that they happen on a reoccurring or systematic type of way. So there's no
Right.
kind of thinking about what do I do next. I just follow the system. I do the next thing on the system. I do the next thing
Right.
on the system. It's exactly like that. And I would say that if somebody is struggling with discipline, either you need to think about how to design a system around whatever it is that you're doing, or you need to be able to have access to somebody, a coach or somebody that can think in systems and tell you the systems to follow, and then you kind of create that system with with your coach to be able to follow through. And the other thing I kind of want to highlight there is then with that type of system, we talked about habits there just a little bit. I think about habits less of I tend to not use that word habit because in oftentimes people say habits and they think of this magical mystery thing that you just set it and forget it. You don't have to worry about it. That's not how I interact with habits. The way that I think about habits is a practice. and it's either a daily practice, a weekly practice, or monthly practice, depending on what type of thing it is. So a little bit about me. My background is in martial arts. I started martial arts when I was 11. In fact, now I'm still in martial arts. Now I'm the head of school, teaching and leading and designing the classes for the people, doing the
Right.
team of other instructors. So thinking about this from an athlete's kind of perspective, practice is something that we understand, something that we consistently do over and over and over again. But practice isn't a habit. Yeah, I have to go to practice, but it isn't like, man, I just show up at practice magically. No. You have to decide to go there and then put the work in while you're there in order for the desired outcome to happen. So with that system in place, if you can think about designing whatever it is that your discipline is failing at as a system, and then design specific practices for you to go through, and then you go through those practices with intent and purpose of fulfilling on whatever it is that you want to fulfill on the other end, that is such a good way to overcome that discipline hurdle.
100% agree. And what I would say with you is that even though you don't consider yourself, you don't like to even call it discipline, you like to call it thinking in systems, there's a benefit to both sides. Because if you are a person who develops this reputation, or you allow people to give you the reputation of being a disciplined person, it makes you look more like a superhero, right? And then at the same time, if you say, hey, I'm a very system, I think in systems and I create strategies, then that also makes you like a superhero, because most people don't do that. So either way, you can kind of leverage it for your reputation, or maybe even for business purposes. So it's a thing I thought about when you said that.
Yes. Well, so speaking of different things to produce, Dre, you have over 400 products, including books, courses, training programs. What drives that prolific output, and how do you maintain focus and energy to keep producing at such a high level? You 25 books. Holy cow, that's tremendous.
Well, thank you. Well, first thing is, a lot of those started in the basketball space, because when I first products I ever created were $4.99. There was two of them, one for dribbling the basketball, one for shooting the basketball. And then when I saw the people like those, they were selling, I said, well, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take every skill that I know in the game of basketball, and I'm going to make a product out of it. So the good thing is, basketball lends itself to a lot of different skills. The same way that you're on martial arts, I'm sure you could probably do the same thing if you wanted to. You could just take every single aspect of it and break it down into its most simple form, and you make products out of them. So that's where I started. And I would say probably about 25 to 50% of those products, that number you threw out there, came from the basketball space. Then when it came to books, well, first of all, we got to give credit to self-publishing, because self-publishing became a thing. I have done traditional publishing, but it's way slower and much more of a headache than it needs to be. But self-publishing, I can come up with a book idea today, and if I write fast enough, the book will be on the shelf on Amazon literally tomorrow. So the self-publishing allows me to get my ideas into books. Interesting thing about books, Chris, as opposed to, let's say, content, even like this very episode right here, is that after a month or 6, people look at content as if it's quote unquote old. But a book, nobody ever says that. Nobody says a book is old. Like, if I give someone a link to one of my books that came out in 2014, nobody looks at when the book came out and said, well, can you write a new version of the book? But if I give someone a video that came out 3 months ago, they say, well, can you make an updated version because that one's old? At least we get that in the athletic space. So I don't know why that is, but actually I do know why it is, because the written word tends to have more authority than the spoken word. I don't know why that is, but that's just what it is. The most important things in life are written down. Religious texts are written down. Contracts are written down. The IRS reaches out to you. They write it down. They don't call you. They write it down. So books are the written word. They just tend to have a longer shelf life. So I just want to get as many books written as possible. I want to get to 100, Chris. I think I can get to 100. So it's just a matter of, again, systems, getting the right systems in place to get these things out there. And then, of course, we need a system for marketing and promoting each one. And that's the biggest thing with me. In the business world today, I tend to focus on maybe only a handful of products. Even though I have so many, I tend to only focus on a handful of products, because I found it's simpler that way with me, depending on who I'm trying to sell to. If I'm trying to sell to maybe more of the masses, then we can get in the multitude of stuff. But when I'm trying to sell to certain type of people, I tend to focus on a handful of things, as I found that if you give people too many options, they tend to take none of them. So it's just keeping it as simple as possible.
Hey everyone, it's Chris Bean here from the Prestigious Initiative. If you're looking to level up your life and unlock your full potential, I've got some exciting news for you. My recent guest, Joel Gandara, has an incredible program called 31 Days to Become a Better Man. Joel has packed years of life-changing insights into this easy-to-read book, guaranteed to help you rethink your shortcomings and redefine what it means to be a man in today's world. But that's not all. Joel also offers powerful one-on-one sessions and group classes to guide you on your journey. And he has a special offer for the Prestigious Initiative listeners. You can get $19.99 off the program when you use code PRESTIGIOUS at checkout. Don't wait. Take your first steps towards becoming the best version of yourself today. Visit 31dailychallenges.com and use the code PRESTIGIOUS for your discount. And now back to the show.
Possible.
Okay, so a legitimate question from me personally, because I have a book that I have been sitting on because I've tried to go the traditional publishing route, and it seems like in order to do that, you have to win, in my eyes, you have to win a popularity contest because they don't even look at your stuff unless you hit so many bars. And
Right.
starting out, that is really a challenge to do. So
Yeah.
doing the self-publish, is there a lower credibility because you're not with a publishing house, quote unquote,
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. Credibility with who?
with a reader?
No, absolutely not.
Mm.
The readers don't know. For the most part, they don't even understand what we're talking about here, Chris, let alone do they care.
Okay.
So if I tell someone that I've written a book with a traditional publisher and I've done self-publishing, the only people who even know what I'm talking about are people who write books. The people who read books don't care. They just say, do you have a book? You have a book? Is it on Amazon? Yes and yes. Okay, they go buy the book. They don't care who published it. They don't care how you got it. They don't care where it came from. They don't care who edited the book. The only people who care about that stuff are the people who are in the space. And it's similar. I talk about this when it comes to the academic world. Is that the only people who care about those acronyms, those letters after your name, are the people who know what they mean. Everybody else doesn't care. So it's a lot of times in certain industries. I tell professionals this all the time: is don't get so caught up in your industry that you're only doing work to impress other people in the industry, because the people on the outside don't even know what those things mean, let alone do they give a damn about them. So when it comes to the publishing world, I much more lean towards the self-publishing space, because in the traditional publishing space, which you probably already know through your experience, is that you have to get walked into the room by somebody who's somebody, like usually a literary agent, and they have to have the right relationship, and then you have to do the whole marketing thing, and you have to sell the book to the publisher, and then they got to decide they're going to do it, and then but between the time you actually sign the contract and the book coming out, you're looking at a year or two, depending on what the subject is that you're talking about. Then they own the book, so they get the majority of the bulk of the money. I mean, I've gotten royalty contracts, not contracts, but the royalty statements from my traditional published book from the publisher, and I'm looking at how much money I got per sale, and I'm like, what's the point of you doing this? Like, I mean, we're talking like not enough money to catch the bus for each book that gets sold. So I'm like, I can keep the bulk of the money if I do it self-publishing, and I can keep the customer, which is the most important thing in business, is having access to the customer. So if somebody buys my book on Amazon, I have no idea who they are. I didn't get any of the money up front. I don't get but a percentage of the money, and I don't get it for 60 days because Amazon decides when I get my money. But if somebody goes and buys my book right now from my sales funnel, I can access that dollar right now if I want to. I can immediately withdraw it out of my merchant account, straight to my bank account, and go spend it at Walgreens if I want to. And I know who the customer is, which means I can sell them more stuff. I can sell them multiple things, and I get them on my email list, so I can continually build the relationship with them to sell them other things aside from books in the future. So the traditional published space will always be what it is, because there are people who will always gravitate towards, I want to go the traditional route. And there are some benefits, like maybe you can connect to a speakers bureau, or they know the right person. No negative side, Chris, to knowing people who can do something in any industry. Is always positives to having more relationships. But if the goal is, again, back to what I talked about earlier, what's the goal? If the goal is maximizing your revenue, and the goal is having control over your herd or your tribe, as we say in an entrepreneurial world, then the self-publishing route is, I'm 100 times more in favor of that. Long answer to a short question.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So, Dre, let's talk about your daily routine or your daily system. You start your day at 3:45 without an alarm, and that's an amazing, a testament to your commitment. So, again, I wonder if you can bring me into some insights into what that system, that routine looks like that contributes to your overall performance.
Absolutely. So one caveat I'll give is that now I have a child. He's 2 years old. You might have heard him a little bit while we're recording here. I do sometimes use the alarm because when you got a kid that I don't know if you have kids, but
Two of them,
at that
yes.
age, yeah, at that age, they're sleeping in the same bed as you. You don't always get the kind of sleep where you can wake up without the alarm. So that's one caveat I'll give you, but it's still 3:45. So first thing I do in the morning, drink a liter of water, go do my yoga and meditation. It takes me about 10 to 20 minutes. Then I'm eating some fruit, shaving, and then I'm going to the gym and working out. So I'm either running, I'll run outside. I live in Miami, so you can do that pretty much year round, or I'm going to these days the boxing gym. So I don't play basketball anymore. I'll go to the boxing gym. So that's every other day I'm doing one or the other. Then when I'm back home, by this point, it's about 7 o'clock. So by this point, I'm getting dressed. And then I usually do a live stream on weekdays, Monday through Friday. I do a live stream about 8 o'clock. And then I do that for about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending on if I have something on the schedule. Like today, we start recording at 9:30. Then I'm doing my work, whatever's on the schedule. So that could be a sales call. It could be recording on a show like this. Excuse me. It could be talking to a coaching client or a coaching member, and myriad of other things, whether that's recording content. I have a book that I need to write. I got to update somebody's funnel. I got to do some copywriting work that I'm doing. So between 9:30 and 5 p.m., I'm doing work that's not always the same. So it's different stuff, whatever's on the schedule. And speaking of schedules and systems, you were talking about this earlier. A simple one that anyone can use is whatever your work schedule is going to be, simply open the calendar app on your phone or your daily planner, whatever you call it, and actually write down all the stuff you're going to do over the course of a day and give yourself time frames for each one. So what I do, I stole this idea from this guy named Dan Kennedy. Don't know if you heard of him, or older marketing guy. And he talked about how he would block off his day in 20-minute blocks instead of 30 minutes or an hour, 20 minutes. So I did the same thing. I just created a bunch of 20-minute blocks from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then every day I just go in there and fill in the block of what I'm going to do in that time. So that's how I schedule out my day. And again, between 9:30 and 5 is different every day. At 5 p.m., I'm done. I take my son out for a walk, and I usually try to be in bed by 7:30.
Okay. How does being in bed by 7:30 work with the family?
Well, my son goes to bed with me, so it gives my wife some space to not have him in her hair because he's with her like all day, and that gives her some space. And sometimes what I'll do is for the work time, I'll cut my work day short. Like today, actually, I'm cutting my work day short to have family time around 1 o'clock today. Tomorrow, same thing. And then, of course, you have the weekends. And if there's any events like down here in Miami, they have this event called Art Basel, which is here like literally this week. So we can do those things on the weekends and sometimes late evenings, sometimes, but most of the time not.
All right. So a couple questions based on that. I want to start with meditation. I have tried meditation a number of times, a number of different ways, a number of different times throughout the day. I seem to almost always fall asleep when I meditate. Do you have any tips or insight into meditation on number one, I guess, why do you continue to do it? And then what is your process that you go through for meditation?
Yeah, so I answer the first one. Why continue to do it is because meditation is one of the few times in the day, especially for most of us these days in this world with these devices, where we are completely unplugged and our subconscious mind has a chance to speak to us and we have a chance to speak to it. Subconscious mind speaks in a whisper, the conscious mind speaks in a conversational tone. And if they're both talking at the same time, you don't hear anything the subconscious has to say. And the subconscious is where our instincts come from. And human beings are instinctive when we are connected. And many of us become disconnected because we're always tuned into something. You know, we got the AirPods in our ears, the phones, always distracted. So that's one of the reasons why I like to do the meditation. Another reason is, I'm sure you're familiar with Napoleon Hill. He wrote the book, Think and Grow Rich, The Law of Success. He's the first person who I really heard talk about the subconscious mind and communicating with it and doing things. And that 3:45 waking up in the morning, I did an experiment that I got from his book. It was actually from The Law of Success. And he said, if you actually you can program the subconscious mind to have it do things. So he said, before you go to bed at night, tell your subconscious mind that you want to wake up at a certain time. Just tell it that. And he said, the next morning, you're going to wake up as if somebody was shaking you to wake up. And I did it. I picked like a random time. It was like 4:15 or 4:17, something like that. And I literally woke up at 4:17. I was like, that's crazy. And there was no alarm. So ever since then, I've always, every night, I give myself a an assignment to my subconscious mind. So that's one of the reasons why I always do it, because someone like myself, I'm always consuming. I listen to 3 or 4 podcast episodes a day. I'm listening to YouTube videos. I'm listening to my own shows. I'm recording stuff. I'm writing stuff. I'm plugged in literally all day. So that is the only time of day that I get to be not plugged in. And also, you get great ideas from your subconscious when you give it a chance to talk to you. So that's one reason why I keep doing it. Now, my process, I got this from, I don't know who said it, but I think it was Russell Simmons, one of his books that he wrote. And he says you can do moving meditation. So meditation does not have to be sitting on the ground on a yoga mat in a lotus position with incense burning. Like, I don't do that and can't do that either, Chris. So you're falling asleep because you're doing it that way. I don't do it that way. When I'm meditating, I am wide awake. My eyes are open. And I'm usually doing my yoga routine and my stretching and my foam rolling while the meditation is going on. So some people have this idea that to meditate means you need to be sitting still and doing absolutely nothing. Not the case. That's the reason why meditation is called a practice, not a science. And see, if it's a science, that means you have to do it a certain way. A practice is you do it how you want to do it if it's getting you the result that you want to get. So that's how I do my meditation. I never sit anywhere silently with my eyes closed, because just like you, I will fall asleep too. So that's how I get it done.
Okay, so you talk about the subconscious mind. My interpretation of the subconscious mind. You can correct me if you don't think this is right, and I implore you to. My idea of the subconscious mind is when we speak in affirmations, like as in I am statements, or when we do meditation, yes, when we listen to that subconscious, or we say those affirmations, the I am statements, that is us communicating and speaking to the subconscious. And the way that I think about the subconscious is kind of like the operating system for how we know to be who we are, right? That's the background operating system that allows us to do things. And oftentimes in our subconscious, we have ingrained stories that were told to us from when we were children, as it seems like between the age of 1 and 8, let's say, anything you're told, you believe wholeheartedly. There's no transference of, oh, that might not be for me. No. I listen to that and I apply that to who I am, and then I put that on as a hat, and I move on throughout my day. And at some point, we move on to be an adult, and we're wearing that hat still way, 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 way low, all the way in our subconscious. And until we can take things from the subconscious into the conscious, we can't grab them and throw them away, because they're in that background process, that operating system for how we know to be us. So it seems to me that the process of meditation, and I also think through affirmation, speaking directly to the subconscious, is where we can start to make those lasting changes for who and how we want to be moving forward, despite whatever has happened before.
Yeah, I completely agree with your interpretation of the subconscious. That's pretty much how it works. It's our underlying programming system. And I heard somebody say that if they have control over a child up to age 8, they can program anything in that kid's mind that will never change their mind, no matter what you try to tell them later on. So yes, 100% agree with you on that. And affirmations, or auto-suggestion as some people call it, those are things that we can use to try to either reinforce or change anything that's in the subconscious, because the subconscious mind gets programmed and reprogrammed through only 3 specific processes. One is repetition, which you just described. The other is immersion, being in an environment where you can only consume a certain type of idea or thought. And the other one is emotionalization. So anything that is striking to you emotionally, you may only experience it one time, but it can change your subconscious programming for the rest of your life, even with only one exposure. So those are the only ways to change the subconscious. And when you do your meditation, you are kind of immersing yourself in one way. And at the same time, if you do the same thing every day, you are giving yourself the repetition. And most people's minds their subconscious get changed through repetition, because those habits that you're not even aware of are conditioning your mind. So you listen to the same music all the time. You're listening to the same TV shows. You're watching the same stuff. You talk to the same people. All right. It starts to program your subconscious mind, even though you don't even know it's happening.
Okay. So thank you for that. I really, subconscious is something that I find really, really fascinating, just because of how it works. And I don't think there's enough people that share information about it. So I appreciate that, Dre. So
Sure.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about your TED Talks. You've given TED Talks on discipline, confidence, mental toughness, personal initiative. How do you translate these concepts? And really, I guess that now is the concepts that you have within the mental game. And so, how do you translate those from theory into actionable steps to apply to somebody's own life, whether that be for yourself or to one of your clients?
So you mean a concept like discipline or confidence?
Yeah, or even mental toughness.
Sure. That's the reason why we have a personal initiative, because that's when the rubber meets the road. But for me, it's helping people. What I like to do is create a framework, is the best way to help people understand something. So for discipline, we have a framework called the third day. And what I've found is that if you just give people information, actually, I didn't find this, I just have learned it because it's always existed. Information is easily forgettable. People tend to forget most information that they hear, but people don't forget stories, and they don't forget if you can put a label or some type of image into somebody's mind around information. It makes it much easier to retain the information and much higher likelihood that they retain the information. So when it comes to discipline, we have a concept called the third day. The third day is all about how do you show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. And what makes it memorable is that we're giving it a label. We're putting a name on it, because everybody has days and they don't feel like working. Everyone has times they don't feel like going to the gym. I'm sure even you have times you don't feel like turning on this mic or the camera or doing your job or dealing with your kids, but you do it anyway. But we give it a label. That's the third day. All right, this is that day when the newness is worn off. It's not exciting anymore, but you still have to do the job. So that's how we kind of make that easily digestible and absorbable for the average person when it comes to discipline. When it comes to confidence, we have a framework called the Super U. And for the Super U, I give a little story to explain it. Basketball player, he was on a high school team, not very good. One day the coach gives an experiment. Everybody's going to pretend to be one of your teammates all day, and this player who's not very good gets assigned to be the best player on the team, just by random assignment. And the question I asked in the audience, and I'll ask it to you, Chris, is how do you think that player played that day in practice?
Oh, amazingly. They embodied that
Right.
best player.
Right, he played amazingly. And what I explained to people is that he didn't all of a sudden just get skills in 30 seconds because the coach told him to. He already had the skills. He just needed permission to tap into it. And the Super U was all about, yes, being at your highest level confidence wise, but it's also giving yourself permission to stop being the person you've always been. All right, to step outside of your programming, as we talked about the subconscious, step outside of conforming to being the person that you think everyone thinks you are, and be a different type of person. So that's what the Super U is. So that's, again, another framework that gives people a visual to understand confidence. Now, the third one, when it comes to mental toughness, this one I don't really put a specific title on it, but mental toughness is just all about you continuing to go forward even when things get tough. And what I explain to people is that this is the opportunity, because most people, first of all, never put themselves in tough situations, and or when they get in and they quit. So the opportunity in life is in the opposites. That's what I tell people. I said this earlier today. The opportunity is in looking at how most people respond to most things and doing different than them. That simple as that. Most people do not follow through. Most people don't stick to things. Most people start things and they don't finish, or most people never start in the first place. They just talk about it and never do it. So your opportunity is in being the one who pushes through and moving yourself to action when everybody else is not. I call it the action bias. And the last one is personal initiative, which is being a go-getter. Everyone understands the concept. Everyone understands what that means. And I tell people, making things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. Successful people happen to things. Unsuccessful people have things happen to them. So which one are you going to be? Which one do you choose to be? And when I give my story, people understand the mental toughness and the personal initiative thing. So when I explain things like the agents weren't calling me, I called them. When I say I wasn't on the basketball team 3 years in high school, only made it 1 year, still tried to play in college. Nobody was checking for me after college. I went and tried to play pro. Even in the pros, I had times I was unemployed and employed. I made a business out of it. So when I explain those things, specifically coming from me, people can visualize the mental toughness. They visualize the personal initiative, and it's, I guess, for lack of a better term, inspiring and motivational to them. The challenge with inspiration and motivation, Chris, is that they don't last. So they need something that's going to kind of stick to the ribs, as we say. And that's where the discipline and the confidence pieces come in.
Okay, so question about mental toughness. And I think you're right. People, they get in uncomfortable situations and they're not familiar enough with what uncomfortable is like for them. So they immediately back out.
Right.
Do you suggest some sort of exposure therapy. So to put themselves into uncomfortable situations on purpose so they know what that's like, and then they have an opportunity to overcome that on purpose with the desired outcome being of when they get in other uncomfortable situations that they're not in on purpose, they understand that uncomfortableness and they're okay to sit in it for however long they need to in order to get out of it.
Yes, well, thank you for the question. I know you're setting me up with this one. So I talk about this in one of my new talks that I came up with is learning how to frame stressful and challenging situations in a positive way, because stress and pressure they can be good things or they can be bad things, because a lot of people look at things that are pressure inducing and stress inducing as negative and they want to avoid them. Well, I don't want to get stressed out. I don't want to have pressure on me. But on the contrary, pressure can either burst a rusty pipe or it can reveal a diamond inside of a piece of coal. The thing is, you were already the rusty pipe. You were already the diamond. All pressure did was reveal what was already there. And stress, there are different types of stress. You have distress, which is the kind of stress that makes a young person feel and look old, and you feel tired and you feel like you can't do anything and you want to run away and curl up in a ball and hide. That's distress. Then there's also eustress, which is actually, a lot of people don't even know that word. It's a real word, EUSTRESS, stress, that is looked at as a positive stress. So this is the kind of stress that you said you do martial arts. So you understand. When you get thrown in the ring to fight some kid who's twice your size, that's eustress. If you look at it that way, or it could be distress if you run away. The eustress is, I know this guy might beat me up, but I'm going to fight anyway. Eustress is, I know that this deadline is going to force me to work 3 times faster than I normally do, but that's good because I'm going to get this done. So eustress, and the biohacking people, they call it hormetic stress. It's the same thing. Is the kind of stress that you look at as a positive thing, because even though it's going to challenge you, you believe that the challenge is going to make you better. So it's all about framing and the way you choose to look at situations. And this goes right back. It kind of ties in everything we're talking about here, Chris. Goes back to our subconscious programming, because nothing in life is positive or negative. No such thing. No such thing as a good thing happening or a bad thing happening. It's just things. It's just the way that we decide to look at them, that we decide to frame it as, oh, this is good, this is bad. And if we program our minds a certain way, we can take everything that happens to us in life and turn it into something positive. One of my favorite books is Robert Greene and 50 Cent wrote The 50th Law. And one of the things that is a theme throughout that book is, I mean, the stories come from 50, but Robert's doing the writing. And he's explaining, like, every single thing that happens in life, you find a way to kind of make it, as they say proverbially, the fuel to your fire. All right, it's just something, it's just another thing that's going to work in your favor. You just find a way to make everything work in your favor. And this is a mindset. And when we talk about mindset, I help people understand that that's 2 different words. There's 2 words together. Mindset. The way that you have chosen to allow your mind to be set, or the way you have intentionally set it, which is fewer people do that. Most people just allow their minds to be set. The way you set your mind determines how you take in everything that happens in your environment. It could be positive, it could be negative. So it's just a matter of how are we walking into the world? What expectations are we giving ourselves? And based on those expectations, everything that occurs, we respond in kind. Because as they say in life, you don't, I think I'm missing the phrase, but they say, I mean, you don't respond to things as they are, you respond as you are. I'm kind of flubbing that, but you get the point.
Yes. So, Dre, I got one final question for you. For those
Sure.
who are looking to dominate their game, whether it's in sports, business, or just in life, what is one piece of advice you'd like to leave the listeners with to get started on the right path?
They want to get started on dominating the game. That's a really good question. If I had to give you just one thing, you don't have time. That's the biggest thing I would give people. You don't have time. Just the date, I don't know when this episode is going to come out, but just this past weekend, we're recording this on a Wednesday. Just this past weekend on Sunday, my mom called me. My dad was on Facebook, and he told it to my mom. My mom called me because I don't really use Facebook like that. But one of my best friends growing up, we grew up next door to each other. He's a year younger than me. I'm 42 years of age. I think his birthday is actually tomorrow from when we're recording this. His wife passed away, 40 years old. And they had 3 kids. And that kind of stuff, you never expect that. You don't think those kind of things are going to happen. Nobody thinks it's going to happen to them. Nobody thinks that's coming their way. But these kind of things remind us consistently. I remember a few years ago, when Kobe Bryant passed away. He wasn't that old. And This is what reminds all of us that we don't have that much time. And many of us humans, we operate with this default setting, like we talked about the subconscious mind, as if we have time. I'll do it later. I'll do it when I feel like it. I'll do it at my own pace. I'll do it when the time is right. Problem is, you don't have time. You can't make bargains with time that you don't have. It's not possible. Like, how much time do we have? I ask audiences sometimes when I'm doing live stream, how much time do you have left? All right, nobody knows. But we talk as if, we operate as if, I'll do that in 6 months. I'll do it next week. I'll do it tomorrow. Well, who guaranteed you're going to make it? So if we can operate with that sense of urgency that we don't have time to put things off, we tend to, that creates pressure, but it's a good kind of pressure. It creates stress, but a good kind of stress that moves us to actually take advantage of the short amount of time we have here called life. So if I give everybody one thing, it would be that.
Well, Dre, I want to say thank you. Thank you for your insights on discipline, consistency, mindset. They've been invaluable. And I want to say thank you again for sharing your journey, your lessons that you learned along the way. And if the listeners wanted to get in contact with you to learn more about you, what would be the best way for them to do that?
Sure. Well, I'm on all the social media platforms. So whatever you prefer, you can find me on there, from LinkedIn to YouTube to X to what else is there? Instagram, TikTok, all those other things. All of those, I'm on all those. Finding me directly outside of social media, you can just go to workonyourgameuniversity.com. That's workonyourgameuniversity.com. But otherwise, whatever platform you prefer, just look my name up, Dre Baldwin. I'm very easy to find, public everywhere.
Very good. And for the listeners, if you want to take your game to the next level, be sure to check out Dre's books, courses, and his work. Thank you for listening to today's episode. Until next time, keep working on your game and striving for greatness.